Hey, this is Warren Sprouse. You're on the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We look at life through a biblical lens. We try to solve all the world's problems in 2 hours or less, and we'd love for you to be a part of the show. Tune in with us live. You can watch how this goes. We've got a chat room and all the rest. I want to talk to you tonight about knowledge. The Bible says that predicted that knowledge shall increase. About 2,500 years ago, during the Persian Empire, we call it Iran today, an angel came to the prophet Daniel, and he said to him, quote, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." We're seeing a dramatic fulfillment of this in our day. Recent inventions include what the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology is doing in Zurich, Switzerland. They have drones that are actually being trained to weave structures out of cable. According to them, they say the drones are positioned and directed autonomously from the ground by a central computer fitted with a camera that watches them as they fly. For example, to loop cables around each other, the computer directs two drones to fly through certain points at exact time. In this way, the fleet can tie complicated knots and form large, regularly repeating patterns strung between fixed structures. The MIT Media Lab in Massachusetts is using robots with robotic clamps to build towers of magnetic blocks. A virtual reality headset will allow judges and juries to analyze a crime scene in 3D. This is possible with new technology that allows crime scene investigators to capture 3D information. The technology includes laser mapping of the scene and MRI and CT scanners to get a detailed picture of injuries. The developers of the new technology are using gaming software, which has become sophisticated enough to create virtual worlds and a gaming headset. It might be possible to view a murder scene from the point of view of the murderer, the victim, or a third person. Researchers are also developing technology to create a 3D image of a room by beaming a laser through a keyhole. Scientists at the Harbin Institute of Technology in China have successfully identified the shape and position of cardboard letters spelling HIT through a 2-centimeter hole in a wall. For now, the technology is in its infancy, requires special conditions. The scientists at the University of Texas have invented a way to reconstruct conversations by taking photos of the environment in which the words were spoken. The sound spying system takes advantage of the fact that sound waves produce minute, invisible to the naked eye vibrations that can still be caught on camera. The new technique now means that theoretically, anyone who can snap photos or video of a room could create or recreate conversations that occurred there. On the other side, our computer generation may be more destructive than we actually know. The New American, in an article dated September 13, 2016, says it's a common and sad story of addiction. Thoroughly hooked, it says, John began to ignore and disengage from other aspects of his life. His behavior deteriorated and his personal relationships suffered. But John was 6 years old, and his bottle? An iPad. Now, the names have been changed, but John's a true story. His mother, Susan, bought him an iPad in first grade because a technology teacher recommended it. He eventually found the popular game called Minecraft, which the educator claimed was just electronic Lego. And pretty soon, John was hooked. As he became more addicted, he began losing interest in reading and baseball, the latter of which he truly loved. His behavior deteriorated and he refused to do chores. And some mornings he'd even remark that he saw the Minecraft cube shapes in his dreams. But life was moving toward an altogether different nightmare. John would throw tantrums when Susan tried taking the game away. And reflecting permissive modern parenting, she rationalized away her concerns and deferred to his wishes. Then, however, came the fateful evening that would shatter her illusions. A licensed psychotherapist by the name of Dr. Nicholas Kodaris, who treated Susan and John, wrote an article in August of this year, 2016, in the New York Post. He wrote, Susan walked into his room to check on him. He was supposed to be sleeping. She found him sitting up in his bed, staring wide-eyed, his bloodshot eyes looking into the distance, and his glowing iPad lay next to him. He seemed to be in a trance. Beside herself with panic, Susan had to shake the boy repeatedly to snap him out of it. Distraught, she could not understand how her once healthy and happy little boy had become so addicted to the game that he wound up in a catatonic stupor. Dr. Kodaris points out that it's no coincidence that tech designers and engineers make the most tech-cautious parents. As he writes, quote, Silicon Valley tech executives and engineers enroll their kids in no-tech Waldorf schools. This could remind one of cartel kingpins who push drugs to others while keeping their own homes pure. On the moral side, Kent Bailey holds a PhD and is a clinical psychotherapist and teacher of therapists. He's also a professor emeritus of clinical psychology in Virginia Commonwealth University. He writes to bemoan the loss of objective morality. He says, in the past, the general population felt guilt and or shame over real or imagined misdeeds. Such, he says, is the glue that holds societies together as we rub against one another on the street or at work or in the home. But no more. True, there's regret over misdeeds that cost people money or prestige. They apologize profusely to evade responsibility. They suffer heartbreak after a loss, and they may exhibit the appearance of shame and guilt to suit some social end, but the real thing is not there anymore. The secularists and others have managed to push 2,000 years of Christianity aside in order to achieve their goals. And what have they given us in exchange? Minorities, immigrants, liberal women, socialists, and Marxists of all stripes are the ones to be favored, and anyone truly Christian, Caucasian, and or conservative are to be marginalized and punished as severely as possible. How many people are not saying they will vote for Donald Trump simply because the moral backlash that they will receive? And they will receive that from the 20% who are truly liberal and hate everything Trump stands for. Yeah, 20%. But it's a vocal, influential, powerful 20%. Religious leaders, media personalities, artists, educators, activists, political leaders, writers, TV personalities, people with megaphones. Rank and file Americans are not as liberal as all of these folks, and they are in the majority. Americans like to make up their own minds about things. The problem is the facts they have available are very often skewed by those that have the liberal agenda. For example, where was our president born? Donald Trump stood up and said, I want to put this to rest. Our president is a citizen of this country. Why would we consider otherwise? Well, because there are people out there, they're called birthers, and they are ridiculed on a regular basis because they're saying that he was not born here at all. He was born in Kenya. Well, they're just prejudiced against a man because he's black or because he's powerful. He's not one of theirs. But there's also legitimate questions that this president refuses to answer. For example, why does he not show us his birth certificate? He said, but he has. No, he has not. What is available and what's being examined, what's questioned, is something called a notification of live birth. And experts have found discrepancies on that. Now, I have had experience with this. I lived more than 60 years of my life thinking I had a birth certificate. When I got my driver's license in New Jersey in 1961, 60. I had to produce it. You had to have a birth certificate in order to get a driver's license. When I got my Social Security card, I had to produce it. When I was in my 60s, I went down to get a passport. I didn't even get 3 steps in the room, and the guy hollered, "That's not a birth certificate." And I had to go online and pay $35 to get a real birth certificate, which came in about 4 weeks. So why doesn't the president do that? I don't know. Does he have to? How did he get his passport? You say, well, apparently he's got a birth certificate. Show it to me. And what I'm saying is all of that creates this dynamic. It adds fuel to the fire. Now, it really doesn't matter because his mother was a citizen of this country. She can give birth to a child anywhere she wants in the world. He's going to be an American citizen. You say, how do you know that? 2 words. Ted Cruz. He was born in Canada. Excuse me. We're making a lot out of nothing. In large part because we can. And because we've got somebody who's not going to play the game. But where's all this knowledge taking us? Knowledge is increasing. Buckminster Fuller created something called knowledge doubling curve. He noticed that until 1900, human knowledge had doubled approximately every century, every 100 years. He noticed by the end of World War II that knowledge was doubling every 25 years. Today, things are not as simple, as different types of knowledge have different rates of growth. It's not as easy to measure these things anymore. For example, nanotechnology knowledge is doubling every 2 years, and clinical knowledge every 18 months. But on average, human knowledge is doubling about every 13 months. According to IBM, the build-out of the Internet of Things will lead to the doubling of knowledge every 12 hours. The average person who doesn't live and die by the internet is living in a world that has long since ceased to exist. Our grandchildren are more informed than are we. Don't watch the news. Don't check the websites. Don't keep up with politics or science or social evolution. It only takes a few years and you will be completely out of touch. But of the things that matter, you don't need an internet. You don't need new information. In fact, the old information, that which transcends time and space, is richer and more profitable than anything you may learn today. You see, Christian values never change. Biblical truth never changes. And there is nothing new under the sun. There are only variations of the theme. Yes, knowledge will increase. But as is always the case and always has been, if you want to know where we're going, you look in the mirror. You look into the Word of God. Because nothing has ever occurred to God. What knowledge do you need? It is fascinating to know that there's all this information, all this knowledge, and it can happen in such fast ways and interesting ways and all the rest of it. And people are coming up with all sorts of things. All of that is fascinating. Doesn't usually change anybody's life. I had a Bible college professor told me years ago, and he was talking about preachers. He says, you never want to be the first guy on the block with the newest car or the newest suit of clothes, whatever the current style might be. But you don't want to be the last guy either. Somewhere in between. And as one who is aged, I know what it's like to be 20. I know what it's like to be 70. You 40-year-olds don't have that advantage. And I can tell you that as you get older, things that used to be important aren't anymore. There are new priorities, there are new values, there are new things that are interesting. I'm still very interested in what's going on in my world. But there's coming a day when I won't be. And it won't change my life significantly. You can try to keep up. And it's not bad. But it's better to stay with the Word of God and the God who never changes.